So, welcome to our professional development session today. And if you look at the title, you might think that it's a continuation of last week. And we've discovered that all of them that we do, there's kind of an underlying thread that goes through. So, as I said, I wanted us to do just to have some discussion time for today. So my question is, what causes you to decide to look something up?
That's a good question.
Can I answer it?
Yes, that's why I just wanted us to do kind of a discussion.
Okay. So basically for me, I want to see how things are connected.
How things are connected?
Yeah. So I want to know the background. I want to know some context. I want to know consequences, causes. I basically want to know how one piece of the puzzle fits into the whole thing. And a lot of times we have one of those pieces, but we don't have the whole picture.
Okay, so based on that, what are some examples? What are some things that you decide you want to learn more about?
Let's say I'm for my class, I'm learning about the Enlightenment, and then there's so much happening, like Napoleon is happening, and wars are happening, and stuff is happening in the colonies. And I feel that if I don't, of course, I will not know everything, but main pieces of the puzzle, I want to see how they interconnect, for example.
Okay.
Well, and I guess for me, there's conversations where, I never heard of that before. Let me Google that and see what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wonderful to have information so readily available that you can get a quick rundown of something just really fast.
Right.
Be able to sound, okay, that makes sense. Or, I don't know, so many things are happening so fast. It's wonderful to be able to get information.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So just something causes us to have a question in our mind and start thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So then what? What steps do you take after that? What do you do with the information and why?
Well, we go online immediately, right? And a lot of times, one thing leads to another, and then at least in my experience, I may end up at a place I didn't even know I was going to, and then I am fascinated because the branching out of this knowledge that I have at the palms of my hand. So the information is not always something that I will integrate into whatever I'm doing, but it is definitely something that I will take notice of for personal growth or for whatever. But definitely take notice of the information.
It really depends, like Mary's saying, on what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it's something that I need to apply right away, and I go ahead and apply it, and I maybe don't think too much about it again later. Or like Mary's saying, if it's, wow, this is interesting, kind of keep checking it out. And sometimes, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, wow, that I use Facebook a lot, and so things will come up, and I'll go, never heard of that, and so I'll make a really snap judgment just based on a quick piece of information, and I need to be careful about that, you know.
All right. Yes, I get that. I get that. So the why depends upon the context then?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So is perhaps the key to what we're talking about curiosity?
Yes. Of course. Yes. Like this website mentions something completely unexpected, and suddenly I want to know.
Okay. All right. And so that curiosity causes you to be engaged in it, right?
Yes. And maybe sometimes a little frustrated because there's too much.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, that there's depending on the tool that you're using to look up your information, how readily available is the information. Sometimes in web pages you go through and it just takes too many clicks, or too many, it's not clear what the information is or how to get there,
Yeah.
and so you just kind of give up. But if you're terribly interested, if you know, you'll come and find a different way to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and then at some point you need to exercise some kind of judgment and say, what am I going to do with all this? So at some point there is a purpose to what you're doing that kind of takes you back to, okay, why did I even start? Right?
Yeah. Wait a minute. What started me on this whole thing? Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a, Judy, do you remember the quote from Alice in Wonderland?
Oh, yes.
It's like going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. And that's what was going through my mind, was how far down the rabbit hole do we get until we say, wait a minute, how in the world did I get here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's a beginning of basis, and you branch out and go start asking people who probably know about it, and then you get a little more understanding of it, and so come back, and that gives you a place where you can pick up.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where, you know, a teacher and classmates really help, that you can start getting a foundation for this new topic.
Okay. Okay. And so based on the idea of curiosity, I'm going to take us back to some of the theorists in education. Piaget indicated that curiosity that was important in the development of our cognitive skills, going from Piaget to Vygotsky, that indicated that our that exploration was really important to increase children's cognitive development. And even Dewey, we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on the experience.
Yeah.
So the next one I have is not a theorist, but someone that's a pretty interesting person, Friedman, Thomas Friedman, journalist and advocate of globalization. And from his book in 2005, The World is Flat, and he's got some excellent ideas on things. He writes a column for the New York Times, I believe. And from that book, The World is Flat, said that curiosity combined with motivation is more important than intelligence. And we've heard some similar types of things in other areas also recently. So the idea of curiosity as a motivator is truly where we are going. Curiosity creates intrinsic motivation. So if we can develop that curiosity in things, then it's like the hook. It's the first part of it. So that takes us to our topic for today, project-based learning. You often see it referred to as PBL, project-based learning, a way of making connections and getting students truly engaged. So we're going to talk about what project-based learning is. We're going to look at some of the components of it, make that comparison between online learning, look at some resources, and think about ways to incorporate it. And so project-based learning truly is a teaching method, and it has these design elements that we will be talking more about in another slide, but it focuses on key skills, and it's important to create that challenging problem or the questions that cause that curiosity. It's sustained inquiry. I asked you what look things up, and that's looking something up we do all the time, but project-based learning truly is sustained inquiry, where we look things up, we look deeper into it, and keep looking and going, like you said, going from one website to another. The cool thing is that project-based learning has to do with authenticity and students' voice, takes reflection, critique, and revision, and is almost always becomes a public project. So this is a quote: when you're teaching online, it's very difficult to have an interactive, motivating course if you're just spewing out text-based information. And that's from an article I read by Kelly, but the quote is from Carrie Lynn Rice, Department of Educational Technology in Boise State University in Utah. And she has done some really intriguing comparisons between project-based learning and online teaching. So
I would submit that that's true for any course, whether it's face-to-face or online.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yet we all know, have dealt with those who feel like if I'm not lecturing, they're not learning. And we know that's not the case. But the more you teach online, it's more important to have the hands-on, authentic project-based
absolutely
activities, where rather than just students just reading and or listening. So here's some of the comparisons, again, from Rice. And I tried to find her article, but it was from she's done some, she works in Utah, but she also has a connection with Poland. And so I haven't been able to get an English version of the article, but this is some of the comments that were made in Kelly's article. In comparison of project-based learning and online education, that the instructors are the facilitators rather than the purveyors of information, and they provide support, that it is engaging and it connects with the real world. And so there's, and one of the other things that she truly mentions, which we have talked about in here, and typically people who come in initially, we see this especially in our e-certification course, feel like they're giving up that connection with students. And most of us recognize that you learn more about your students in an online course than you actually do in a face-to-face course. And that's Dr. Rice's perspective on it too, is that she gets a more depth understanding of who students are and what they bring to the table and what their interests are in an online course. then there was also a reference in one of the articles that I read about Dan Meyer's TED Talk on teaching math, and I have the link to it at the ending of it, at the ending of this. But it's a really interesting TED Talk because he is a math teacher, and he makes a reference to the fact that he teaches content that students are there because they have to, not because they want to, and are required. And so he talks about how he managed to come up with a way of creating it as projects. So it's fun, and I won't even try to explain. But he instead of it says that the math textbooks give all of the information. You just have to know how to pick out the information and put it into the formula. So he has students want to know, okay, just give me the formulas, and so he breaks the things down into an actual something that they have to figure out what it is they're trying to find. So it puts students in the position of having to determine what information they need by asking the right questions. And so based on this, and of course,
That's awesome.
I have figured out
really
my bias.
Sounds awesome.
That really changes the motivation from the extrinsic, where my motivation is I have to pass the course.
Yeah. Just give me the formulas, and even in the and he indicates in there in the math textbooks, and he shows that in the TED Talk where they've given you the example and he highlights the three key things, and then in the assignment ones they even have same basic format, just different topics, but the same three things. And it even shows where he has a reference to C sample 5B on page 4 to 85. And so the way he shows how he takes them apart and gives them the idea of what they need to look for before he gives them that information. So based on that, based on what we know so far, why would we do this?
Well, for one thing, it really brings the learning to a much higher level. I was working with a professor the other day, and I hadn't heard anything about the topic that he was addressing, and so I started looking it up. And I said, wow, instead of giving this information to the students, let's have them go and try to find it and figure it out themselves. It becomes much more interesting if you have a problem to solve than if you just have to submit an assignment.
Yeah, if they are engaged. So I have another quote here. Again, Rice. She says, I think the more you teach online, the more you learn that it's more effective to have student-centered, hands-on, authentic, project-based activities than it is to have lecture-type activities where students are just reading and absorbing information. And that truly is, we all know that at the core of our teacher hearts. So what I'm going to do is share an incredible resource on project-based learning, and this is Buck Institute for Education, BIE.org, and I'm going to give you a chance to go take a look at a couple of things on that website in just a few minutes. This is a screenshot I took of their resource page. Every one of these things are things to click into and go participate in, learn more about, read, get involved with, read, watch, and interact in. So it's a fascinating website, and they've got, they include rubrics, they include a whole project planner format. It's pretty interesting. So this is what they refer to as the gold standard for project-based learning. And it's set up, can you figure out why it appeals to me? It's set up as the lens on a camera, the aperture opening for the lens on the camera, with the focus in the center being that the student knowledge and their understanding and their success skills. So the components of it are that of project-based learning is that there's a challenging problem or question, that there's what's it all about? What is it that we want to explore or discover? It's done, as I said, with sustained inquiry, more in depth than just let's go to Google and look it up, but where we look up, we have our question, we look it up, and then we go find more. It takes time. It's involved. You get deeper and deeper into the content. It's when there's a challenging question or problem and you keep finding pieces of it and keep looking for more parts of it, and to find out the total answer. Mm-hmm. Project-based learning has a sense of authenticity to it. It may be a project within a school, within a community, or a learning of, say, really finding the in-depth causes for the Civil War or something happening. But there's definitely a feeling of authenticity to it. It also has student voice and student choice in it, where the students are actually having a strong component, a strong part of what they're happening, what's studying, what's going on with them. Interestingly, it involves reflection. There's a sense of stopping and thinking about reflection on the content, knowledge, and understandings that are gained is what helps students solidify what they've learned. Then thinking about how it's going to apply it somewhere else beyond the actual project. And of course, with reflection comes the idea for critique and revision. And when it's this critique and revision can involve their peers, but it can also involve outside experts as well. And that adds, again, that air of authenticity to it. And then the idea that what we're creating...
I just have a question here.
Sure.
Sorry. I don't think that I've understood that before, that critique and revision falls under reflection. I think I've sort of always thought of reflection as a ethereal sort of journaling kind of a thing, and to put that under the reflection piece, that helps a lot, because that makes it kind of more something I can measure, something I can actually, well, I don't know. In today's world, we don't do a lot of just sit back and reflect, you know what I mean?
Yes, but that reflection is where the improvement comes in. Thinking about what we did and how it works, and what I can do to make it better.
Well, and certainly to try it again and revise things, that would be a concrete process that we can use to apply it. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, and thinking about, okay, this worked out this way. What can I do the next time I have a problem similar to this, and how can I make it better? And it is all of this is pretty much interchangeable in there.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. And then the idea of a public project really adds a key point to it, because instead of an assignment that you and the teacher are seeing, if it's a group project, it might be for the whole class. And many times when we're doing online teaching, it does wind up being a whole class project. But some of their recommendations are that it also be made public, that it's a blog, that it be put out there so that others can see it, particularly if it's a project that's going to impact within the community. And so we're more likely to put our best foot forward if we know that it's more than just between myself and the teacher. So this is again from Buck Institute for Education, their elements, the design elements.
That's wonderful. I had an online professor. I was taking a web design, a HTML class, and he had a sort of a blog page created by. It was made up of comments and advice from former students.
Oh,
who
nice.
had finished the class and who were they were giving us advice about how to succeed in the class.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, make sure you leave plenty of time, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. And it was really great to have those sort of voices of experience that we would never meet, but we benefited from their reflection. It was great.
Yeah. That's often an end of the semester or end of the term project or assignment, is to look back and give advice to the others coming along behind you. So this is from one of the people on the Buck website, where the teacher in this case had won a state award, and based on a quote from the book, which I've seen at the bookstores. I haven't actually read it yet, so guess what I'm going to be doing this weekend. What do you do with an idea? You can change the world. And what she did with her class was give individuals or small groups of them the option of figuring out what they wanted to do. A couple of them, one had a sister who had to go into the hospital regularly for a procedure. And so they came up with the idea to create something to make that a more effective and an easier process for them. A couple of them worked on things to improve around the school. A couple of them had community projects. A couple of them did something to help with the homeless. And so the whole idea of the project, it's almost, though it's hard to do as a teacher, but to get out of the way and let the students learn. Not so easy, but truly effective, So think about whatever is something that you might be working on, or you might know of someone working on. What could be some potential topics for projects? And I'm going to throw a couple out based on one of the classes that I teach. I have my students researching educational funding, and they do come up with the facts and the sad stories and all of that. So what I could do is turn it around and have them do their research, because it is a research, and all of the things that I do at the end of that class are research projects, but to come up with suggestions or ideas or things that could improve the situation. Another one that they do is what's one of them? The trends and issues in education. And so they could take one of those trends and make it into a community project. One has to do with the social issues that face students. These are all pre-service teachers that I'm teaching. So they're one of their research projects is social issues facing the students, that their students have to deal with. So I could let them take it a step further and come up with solutions, either a class-wise or school-wide, to help with that. So there's a couple of ideas I'm throwing out. What about you? Any ideas for potential topics for projects?
Well, all I can do is steal from the people that I'm working with at this point. But the professor who's teaching the peace studies class, he's got folks going out and doing community service and reporting back on that. There are folks who are doing how does a nonprofit organization work, and so actually having to build, write a grant proposal. There are really practical ways of applying what you're actually learning. Web page design, okay, go ahead, design your web page, and then there's also the piece of when you've got things like massive pieces of history, kind of put partners together and say, all right, pick a topic, and it's going to be your job to teach everybody else about this. And you can pick your own way to do it, but it just needs to have these particular elements in it. And go for it, because really we've seen that the most effective way to learn something is to have to teach it to somebody else.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think for me, community-based teaching is a very abstract concept, and I think it's a cultural thing. In my country, we do not engage with our communities the way we do here. We don't volunteer at our schools. It's like that connection is lost. So I always have a hard time trying to bridge that gap. So for me, that would be the challenge: how to, in my mind, make whatever I'm teaching in the classroom connect back to the community. So very interesting and very challenging for me. Like I said, it's a cultural thing.
And that's interesting to me, because it doesn't occur to me that we would not be involved in the community.
Yeah. But our schools are basically private schools.
Right.
Our kids grow up with a very distorted picture of who they are and how they fit into their society. So it isn't until they get into college, it's already late. It's already like, I feel that sense of engagement needs to be fed as they grow up. They need to feel they belong to that community. So finding how to do that for me would be very, very interesting.
Yeah. And we're all a part of something bigger. And so as we can recognize that and help our students recognize it's important.
Yeah.
So here's your opportunity to take a look at the Buck Institute for Education. They've got a project search page on there.
Nice.
So if you want to take a moment and go see if you can find something that there's tons of ideas, tons of things in there. So if you want to take a minute and go look for something, or jot down the web link, and go look at it a little bit later on. Okay, you can go back.
There's an awful lot.
Yes, there is. There definitely is. So you can. That's one of those things you can save and dig into in all of your spare time. So this is what we have done through this. We talked about the components. We talked about what a tight connection to online, and we've looked at some possible topics, and started. I think this has been an awareness thing as much as anything else. Started ourselves in thinking about the effectiveness of actually getting students engaged through projects. So, coming attraction next week, we have a reflection on the semester. The following week, we'll be taking a look at the Quality Matters process and how the Center for eLearning supports that process. And the following week is take some downtime. So thank you for that. And this is the reference list, the information that I use. The Meyer one is the TED Talk. So,
thank you very, very much.
Welcome. Thank you.